Welcome back to Turkish series stars. Before we begin, if you care about long-form storytelling that treats famous faces like full human beings and not just headlines, please like, subscribe, and, if you want to back the research and craft behind these deep dives, tap the join button. Your support keeps these kinds of narratives breathing. Now, let us step softly into a chapter about two performers whose on-screen harmony became, for many, a touchstone of tenderness. Some collaborations evaporate as soon as the cameras stop, others settle into the collective pulse, resurfacing the way a melody returns uninvited. The pairing of Akın and Ebru belongs to that second kind, the kind that lingers. At the beginning, it felt purely professional, two actors tending to the needs of a script, meeting their marks, listening for cues, honoring direction. Then the episodes rolled out, and people tuned their attention, and something quieter took root. Moments that behaved less like acting and more like shared breath. The signs were small but insistent. There was a pause that ran one heartbeat longer than necessary. There was the way one softened at the other's arrival. There was a rhythm to their sighs and their smiles, a cadence impossible to choreograph in full. Those tiny pieces gathered mass. And once they were heavy enough, they pulled perception toward them. Viewers stopped merely watching. They began to dwell inside the scenes, rewinding, comparing, trying to locate the source of that particular warmth. Inside the industry, what they spoke of was not glitter but mechanics, trust, the kind that makes a rehearsal room feel like a sanctuary. Directors noticed that notes did not always need to be said aloud. Akın would make a microscopic shift and Ebru would answer in the middle of a breath, as if she had felt the suggestion before it formed. Crew members remembered small customs growing into habits. A thermos of strong tea moved between their hands to fend off the studio chill. A casual question about a parent's health turned into an evening ritual, a steady check-in before final takes. Lines were traded in a tucked-away corner to sharpen truth for the public lens. Within that orbit, connection showed itself in craft and care rather than headlines and flash. Outside those rooms, audience curiosity spun its familiar web. Social timelines became case files. When Akın posted a reflection about patience or shared a photo bathed in late afternoon gold, admirers combed the caption for a sign. When Ebru offered a scrap of verse or a quiet image of the sea, followers read it like code, a message sent off on the tide. A like here, a comment there, and speculation swelled. Some theories looked like projection, a wish to stitch romance where only artistry sat. Other details carried a density that refused to be shrugged away. That blend of doubt and hope, of restraint and wonder, powered the narrative people kept building in real time. Then came a public night, the sort where cameras sweep the hall and stumble into intimacy without meaning to, when a fleeting exchange turned into cultural currency. They were not seated together, different tables, different clusters. Yet the lens found them and, for a matter of seconds, stitched a story. Her smile, unadorned and exact, his look, quick and almost startled, as if memory had been unearthed, his eyes away, and then back again, a small arc that read like a cipher. The clip was replayed until it glowed hot. Comment threads multiplied interpretations. Interviewers, later, asked about the collaboration. Their replies were plain in language and complicated in effect. He spoke of learning to listen more carefully. She spoke of bravery taught in rehearsal. Those careful answers only gave the public more to feed upon. What often gets missed in the public rush is the way professional respect can stretch into a kinship that resists easy labels. With Akın and Ebru, it was never only about chemistry captured by a lens, it was also about presence becoming scaffolding, structure for the work, shelter for the person standing opposite. He often chose roles that demanded patience, gravity, a quiet steadiness built scene by scene. She leaned toward characters of interior courage, the kind whose stillness carries freight. That artistic complement kept their exchanges lively even as they walked separate paths. Their victories arrived on individual terms, applauded for their own merit. Yet hints of the earlier partnership hummed underneath, a chord that warmed later performances in ways not easily named. Skeptics will remind you, correctly, that fans can build myths from fragments. Some argue that what looks like romance is simply two strong professionals locking into a shared tempo. It is a fair argument. Synchronicity can feel like longing when you are hungry for it. But those who stood nearby also speak of something that outpaced technique. They talk about private gestures that looked like caretaking rather than theater, a murmured reminder about medication during long nights, a quick check-in whispered between setups. A wry, tiny joke designed to let the tension leak out of the room without ceremony. These are not grand declarations, they are proof of humanity. And that is precisely why the public attachment can feel less like wishful fantasy and more like witness to a rare kind of attention exchanged between two people. Years moved forward. Each chose work that demanded new registers, new muscles. Audiences watched them reassemble themselves, applauding risks that rewrote expectation. Yet the archive did not grow dusty. Fans returned again and again to the old scenes, drawing from their emotional reserve in the way one revisits a well-worn letter. Clips made fresh rounds. Fan edits resurfaced. Lines of dialogue were lifted and paired with music that amplified hunger and ache. The past did not ossify, it seeped into the present like light through a curtain. Coincidences kept the myth breathing. Posts aligned by hour or by mood. Two interviews, conducted apart, carried overlapping words as patience, honesty, trust, and sent minds racing. A director, writing without names, offered a small meditation on what it means to be held by a scene partner, and followers nodded as if the message had found its intended address. Were these alignments planned or merely incidental? It hardly mattered. What mattered was the continued feeling that the two artists remained, in some manner, tuned to the same frequency. What the phenomenon reveals most clearly is the audience's hunger for bonds that feel true. The Akın-Ebru thread lives in that space where craft and human yearning intersect. It presents a partnership plausible enough to believe and spacious enough to keep. For many, it is not a solved mystery but an ongoing meditation on where art ends and feeling begins. And so we ask you, our listeners, can the emotional truth you discover in a scene stand apart from anything that might exist off camera? Or do we need a private proof to validate what we felt in the public gaze? Share your perspective in the comments. Your voice helps shape the conversation we host here on Turkish Series Stars. As this story continues to circulate, through festivals and anniversary posts, through interviews and the late-night scroll, its strength rests less on definitive evidence than on the stubborn insistence of memory. What we recall survives because we choose to carry it. There may never be a tidy conclusion, no press note dated and signed to close the matter. And yet the feeling persists. It persists in the gestures that once slid by unnoticed and now feel like treasures. It persists in the edited scene that catches your breath at 1 a.m., in the message you send a friend that reads, "Did you ever notice that look?" It persists in the way one name calls up the other without effort. Before we close, one more reminder. If you value these nuanced portraits and want more full-length features on the figures shaping our shared imagination, please like, subscribe, and consider pressing join to support Turkish Series Stars. Your engagement is the reason we can research deeply and produce thoughtfully. Thank you for staying with this reflection. Whether you watched their partnership as art, leaned toward reading it as more, or simply enjoyed the performances without needing a verdict. The story of Akın Akinozu and Ebru Şahin endures because people decided to remember. Keep watching attentively, keep asking generous questions, and keep coming back to Turkish Series Stars for stories that linger. And if you must have one last image, let it be this: a rehearsal room late, the air heavy with the day's labor, two actors running lines in a corner that feels like an alcove. One stumbles, the other steadies, no fanfare, no flourish, just an instinct toward care. The cameras are elsewhere. There is no soundtrack, only the rasp of pages turning and a shared breath. In that unremarkable moment lives the reason these memories endure, because they were human first, and because we recognized ourselves there, in the quiet exchange between two people choosing to hold the scene, and perhaps each other, just a little more gently than the world required.